down to 6. Inside Brown. He's not going to miss anything that close. He's been burying those all night.
Malik Brown returns to Syracuse as Duke looks to extend their 15-game winning streak and 11-0 undefeated conference record as they take on Syracuse this Wednesday at Syracuse. Road game for Duke. Syracuse is coming into this one 10-12 overall, 4-7. They are coming in off of a win at Cal, which was very important. It stopped a 3-game losing streak for Coach Autry, who's in his second season now at Syracuse. But I think before we get into Duke and this game with Syracuse, we have to spend a couple of minutes on the trade news because it does involve some members of the Brotherhood. The Luka Doncic trade with Anthony Davis is just mind-boggling. I still haven't figured out why the Mavs have done this. I've heard a lot of theories, that they didn't trust him. They didn't want to sign him to a big contract. The GM saying he really values defense. All of this stuff, I'm not really buying much of it. I'm curious if we'll get the truth maybe 6 months from now, maybe a year from now. We'll get some real answers. But it does affect Derek Lively with the Mavs. I do think while they will play Anthony Davis at the 4, he will close games at the 5, which will take away some minutes from Lively or Gafford. And I think we'll see how they affect that. It also means Kyrie Irving is no longer the number 2 option on offense, in my opinion, for the Mavs. He's at least the number 1 ball handler. He's the guy who's got to initiate all the offense, and I'm sure his scoring numbers will go up along with his assist numbers with Luka now on to the Lakers. And it does mean Coach J.J. Redick has a different task to solve with Luka and LeBron now on the same team, at least for the next few months. We also had De'Aaron Fox go to the Spurs. And it was a trade. I mean, the Spurs sent out a number of draft picks, but in that trade, Trey Jones ends up with the Chicago Bulls. Just a crazy weekend of NBA trades that were. I mean, De'Aaron Fox, we saw some tea leaves, but the Luka Doncic trade really came out of absolutely nowhere. And I'm still processing that a couple days later.
How strange was that trade? It was on the national evening news.
I saw on TikTok in a Bundesliga match, they were in the post-match interview. They asked them about this trade. That's how big of a trade it is. It's crazy.
Well, and I think the most interesting part for me is, for JJ Redick, he is clearly committing to Luka as the face of the Lakers for years to come, and knowing that LeBron, although I watched him against the Knicks the other night, and I said it's just remarkable that this guy can play at this level and affect the game. He had a triple double against the Knicks, and the Lakers won in Madison Square Garden, and it is just remarkable how he can play that way. But good for the Lakers. Thinking ahead, it's only going to be I thought this year would be LeBron's last year because he'd have the chance towards the end of the season possibly to play a couple of minutes with his son. But they clearly are both thinking about now, because they beat the Knicks without Anthony Davis. And so bringing Luka on now gives them the possibility of just a phenomenal player playing alongside the team that has been stitched together. And I think JJ Redick must have thought he hit, 10 threes in one game, which is his favorite shot. So just a remarkable trade.
Absolutely. And with that being said, let's circle back and do a little bit of housekeeping. So we're gonna start we've been asking you guys for score predictions. We're gonna start turning this into a real contest moving forward. We've got 10 regular season games left, 9 in the conference, 1 non-conference. And so what we're going to do is whoever is the closest in total points is going to win. And so Marcus Styles 84-65 was the closest this past game against North Carolina. He had the prediction of 87-67, and the final score was 87-70. So that's damn close as far as I'm concerned. And between the two of us, I would have won. I had the score at 85-74. You had it 80-70. Actually, I'm not sure. We'll be a little bit more clear next time, because the way we're gonna do this is total points. Whoever's close to the total points is going to win, and the tiebreaker is going to be the spread. So to give you,
what do they win, Jack?
Well, good question. So what we're gonna do is tally up the winners at the end of the regular season. Whoever has won the most, we're going to send some Duke memorabilia. Maybe it's a hat, maybe it's a scarf. You never know what it could be, but we're going to keep that a surprise, and we're going to send it to the winner at the end of the year. So make sure you drop your score predictions in the comments, a part of your regular comments as well. It's been really a lot of fun to grow this channel with you guys, and it's made, typically in the Duke season, it's just us talking to each other, and sometimes that's not the best. So it's been great to get a lot of other perspectives in the room, if you will, with us, and be on the journey of this Duke season.
What was the first, since I've been following them since 1978 when they played in the Final Four in St. Louis, and you weren't born yet. What's the first season that you have memory of?
I can't necessarily say like a specific game, but, and this could be, sometimes your memory is a little bit of a weird thing. But for me, the players that stick out are Jay Williams and Chris Duhon. So I must have been 4 or 5. And the opponent that is always, I don't know why, but the opponent that I always remember Duke playing is Maryland and Juan Dixon. Those are my first memories. So that Jay Williams, Chris Duhon, Mike Dunleavy, who else was on that team? Boozer, those guys. I think Battier was on that team. Maybe just past him. I was 4 or 5, so I can forgive myself for my memory on this. But that's my first Duke memories. That early 2000s Duke team, which was, one of the better Duke teams of all time. So a good time to get started.
Well, I don't think it's been rare since then that you and I have missed watching a game. It happened occasionally, but we always watch together, no matter where you. The hardest was, I think, when you were in Greece, and we had to figure out the time and everything, but we still were texting each other during that. Last year when I was up in Cambridge, we were doing it, and it has been one of the things that has bonded us. And I think you're absolutely right. It has been so much fun to have the comments and people listening to us live and putting something in the chat, because our enthusiasm for Duke, there are just literally thousands of others. Yes, there are other Duke haters. However, there are lots and lots of fans. It's kind of like the Yankees. And so it's been great growing this and having the ability to share our passion for Duke with the fan base.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun. Let's move into Syracuse, because this game, I don't know about you, but for me, this screams trap game all over it. You're coming off the big win at home against North Carolina. You've got the big game next weekend against the number 2 team in the conference on the road at Clemson. And in the middle, you've got to go to Syracuse, who certainly has not been in their best times the past handful of years. They're below 500. They there's just not a lot to get the team up and motivated for. And this is a Syracuse team that has some pieces, but has been really inconsistent. And most importantly, they haven't had their two best guys together very often. They've played 22 games this season. They've played 7 games with their two best players, J.J. Starling and Donnie Freeman. Yeah, go ahead. You can.
Breaking news. Breaking news. Dickie V. He's calling the game on Saturday.
So skipping past Syracuse, he'll hopefully be back for Clemson.
Yes, he can't do apparently they have it on Bleacher Report that he will call the Duke Clemson game. It's his first game in 2 years. And I know some of the younger listeners don't have quite the appreciation for what Dick Vitale has brought to the game, but his enthusiasm, his excitement. This is his 4th battle with cancer, and he's coming back, and he will be doing breaking news. It just came over the feed.
I did, for all of our listeners and watchers, I did double check to make sure JD was accurate, and he is this time. 1 out of 10, he does get some of these news. He does break news accurately. So that cross our fingers, because listen, we did get the news he was supposed to be back for the Wake Forest game, and then he had, I think, a health scare, maybe a fall. So cross our fingers. Hopefully he can make it back officially for this Clemson game. So Syracuse, as I said, their two best players, J.J. Starling, Donnie Freeman, they've only had 7 games together out of the 22 this year. J.J. Starling is a junior. He spent 1 year at Notre Dame. This is his first year where he's been the guy for Syracuse. Last year was Judah Mintz. This year, he's taken over the reins as the leading scorer, 18 points a game, 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists. He has been less efficient as the guy, and it makes sense. He did deal with an injury, and there's just not a lot of consistent support on the rest of this roster. Donnie Freeman, I'm curious if he will play in this game. They had him listed at questionable for the game against Cal. He's not played in several weeks at this point. He was a top 15 recruit, 6'9", just over 200 pounds, 13 points per game, 8 rebounds, really talented player. And I hope he can play, because I want to see, how Duke plays against the best teams that they can play. And if Freeman's playing, it certainly changes the level of this Syracuse team. At center, Syracuse plays Eddie Lampkin. And Eddie Lampkin, he's in his 5th year of college basketball, spent his first 3 at TCU. Last year, he was on the Colorado team that I know both JD and I really thought was a good team and a lot of fun to watch. I will say Eddie Lampkin was my least favorite part of that team. He is averaging 10 points, 9 rebounds, 2.5 assists or so. He is listed at 6'11", 300 pounds. He gives off, for those Duke fans who've been watching every game, Chad Venning vibes as a big man who can score in and around the basket. But also, he's got some DJ Burns to him in that he is a good passer. The reason I'm not a Eddie Lampkin fan is, as a center, he leaves a lot to be desired in terms of his ability to defend. And if you put Eddie Lampkin in a pick and roll, you're going to get a good shot 8 out of 10 times. And so he may score some points and get you some points on the offensive end, but I think he gives up more on the defensive end of the court.
So, Jack, I don't see this. I don't see this as a trap game. And the reason why is Malik Brown. Because with Malik's return to Syracuse, he's got major incentive to want to show off his skills for the Syracuse fans. And so I completely agree, because I wrote it down in my notes to say they just came off the high of UNC and they know they've got Clemson on the other side. This would be a classic trap game, but Malik Brown will not let that happen. So just thought I'd throw that in.
Well, I'm glad you did. I am glad you did. But we still got a little ways to go, because I think it's important we break down each team, no matter our confidence level in them. We gotta give them the respect that each opponent deserves. And
All right.
and so let's continue. So you've got Chris Bell Jr. forward back from last season. He's regressed a little bit. He is shooting much better from three, similar to what he did in his past, 45% from three in conference play. He had a real sluggish start, but he's shooting much better, but playing significantly less minutes, around 17, 18 minutes compared to 26, 27 last year. J.R. Davis is a transfer forward from Delaware who's moved into the starting lineup with Donnie Freeman out. 6'7", 8 points, 5 rebounds, not much of a three-point shooter. Jaquan Carlos is their leading assist guy off the bench. 6 points, 3.7 assists per game for Carlos. He is only 6 feet tall. And part of the reason he's coming off the bench is because he's not a great shooter. And they have mixed in, certainly against Cal, more zone. And at 6 foot, it's just tough for him to be impactful in the Syracuse zone. Lucas Taylor is another transfer, 6'5". He's averaged 8 points and 3 rebounds in conference play, mostly as a starter. They have like 9 or 10 guys who play. Kyle Cuff, 6'2", junior, spent 1 year at Kansas, averaging about 5 points per game. Elijah Moore was a top 100 recruit, 5 points a game for him as a freshman. Peter Majstorich, who is a 6'8" freshman, played in the ASFL U21 system from Serbia. He is playing about 10 minutes per game. Does get, a little over 3 rebounds per game. And lastly, Naheem McLeod, who's 7'4", has played in very limited minutes this year after playing in 14 minutes per game last year as a transfer from Florida State. Just played in his most minutes of the year, 9 minutes against Cal. Just curious if he will play 9 or 10 minutes against Duke. It would be fun to see him matched up with Kaman Malawach.
So two other stats that also give me great comfort that this will not be a trap game, which is the Syracuse team does turn the ball over a lot. And the second thing is they are 291st from three-point range. They only shoot 31% from three-point range. So our defense will be, they turn it over a lot. Our defense is still just a stifling defense. And the fact that they can't rely on three-point shooting, I'm still going to say, although when I get to my prediction, it'll be a little different. But I'm not worried that this will be a trap game.
I agree. I had a similar note written down about their turnovers. They're last in the conference at turning the ball over, and what makes it even worse is they don't force the other team to turn it over either. They're second to last in generating turnovers.
Yeah,
it's a bad combination, along with, as you said, the lack of 3-point shooting. It's a tough matchup. They're 111th overall in KenPom, 125th offensively, 139th defensively. It is, it's going to be tough. The one interesting stat on Malik Brown, because I think this is a good game to focus on Malik Brown. This year in total, he has, he's averaging 2.5 points per game, In total, he has 39 points. In the game, which was his career high against Duke last year for Syracuse, Malik Brown had 26 points. He has changed his game a lot. He wasn't like a big time scorer or anything, but he has just done whatever the team has needed for him, and that has meant that he's not he was never like an aggressive scorer, but he's not looking for his shot like at all. And it has meant though his passing, his ability to screen and create space for his teammates, his impact has just been felt in other areas. I could see this being a game where, based off of listening to his teammates in the post game interviews, I think they're going to try to get him double digit points in this one to reward him in his game against Syracuse, because everyone from Cooper Flagg to Con Kanipa to Tyrese Proctor to Coach Shire, they were so happy to have Malik Brown back against North Carolina. And it
We
says
were
a
too.
lot. Yeah, we were too. It says a lot because you look at a guy who plays 17, 18 minutes a game and averages 2 points. And, if you weren't following this Duke team, you would be very confused as to why, these guys were so excited to have him back. But as Coach Shire said, he comes back into the team within his first 5 seconds. He's got a deflection and a steal, and it led to 3 points for Duke. So he's just so impactful.
It's kind of funny in the way that Cooper Flagg started the game against UNC, that seemed to lift the offense for everybody to say, we're going to be able to play this game well and score. That I think Malik Brown, more so than anyone else on the team, and admittedly, it is a team that they're all capable of playing top level defense. But when Malik gets on the court, and in the UNC game, within 3 seconds, he deflected a ball. It's like all of a sudden everyone else is trying to see, can they get a steal? Can they just deflect the ball? Because I think Coach Shire also in that post game was trying to say, how many deflections did they have as a team? And it was a high number, either resulting in an actual steal or just a ball going out of bounds. So Malik Brown can influence the game. Well, if you look at a box score, you're never going to see it.
No, Coach Shire said it was the most they've had all year. I mean, it's just, and I don't on like Duke's Instagram, I don't know how accurate this is, but after Cooper Flagg, they like Cooper Flagg after he got his and one, he was celebrating, right? And what they put as what he said was, I'll leave out the curse word, but he said he's back, and he was like flexing on with Malik Brown. So he was more he just got the and one, but he was, which we know about Cooper Flagg at this point, he was more excited because Malik Brown was back and got the deflection and steal that led to his bucket. He wasn't celebrating his own bucket. It was more so that Malik Brown was back, and that's what it means. And to your point, it's like, okay, like Malik Brown, he's back. He's looking for deflections. Now all of a sudden, like, all right, Proctor's trying to get one, and Sion's trying to get one, and it's infectious on the defensive end of the court, and then it leads to runouts and easy transition buckets, which just helps the rhythm when you do have to score in the half court. So I just think overall, can Malawach continue to have an impact? And I think this is going to be a good test for him after he kind of struggled with the Venning matchup, right? And he's going to have a guy who's bigger than Venning, not quite as skilled in that low post scoring, but he can do more in terms of he can pass the ball. And how will Malawach deal with this several weeks later? Has he improved? I think it's going to be a good test for Malawach. But, thankfully we've got Malik Brown. So if there's any problems, you just throw him in there and good luck, right? So we've seen that before. I think Hunter Dickinson and Janai Broom can attest to the problems that Malik Brown presents.
Uh, yes, and I don't. I did this in our last one where I started looking over at Auburn and looking over at some of the other competition, and it's there, and I'm noting it. But other than the Illinois game coming up on February 22nd, I believe is when you corrected me. Um, it's 3 days away from my birthday, so now I can remember. But uh, it, I watched Illinois yesterday, and the guy who you love, who I can't pronounce his last name, that the lefty.
Kasparis Yakunisius. I think I butchered that, to be honest.
That's gonna be a really good test, a really good game that they have in the schedule, because I always fear that in the Big 12 and in the SEC, the competition every night is intense, and you're up against you know top 25 teams every other night, and so in any case, I think it's very important. I would like Syracuse to do us a favor. I'd throw the 7'4" guy and Lumpkin on the court at the same time,
Well,
and really go big and cause Mal to go, oh, wait a minute, what do I, how do I handle this? And the same thing,
I
so
mean, the problem is neither of those guys move very well. So I at least they are playing a zone, but there would be lots of opportunities to create shots if they are playing together.
I thought I caught somewhere where they don't play the zone as much as Bayheim did.
They
That they'll
100% true. They did play
Okay.
it. They played it more in the game against Cal than what I remember from watching earlier in the season, from watching Syracuse earlier. And I was more so saying that in terms of if they play Lampkin and McLeod together, they have to play zone because those guys
Right.
you can't what one of those guys is supposed to cover Cooper Flag, like that's not going to happen. So I'm just having a little bit of fun with that as well. And on the Duke side, one guy who whenever you're ready, you can get to your three keys. But one guy who I'm very curious about is Con Knipple, who has been on an upward trajectory the past handful of games. And what I'm curious about is this is a Syracuse team that is certainly bigger than North Carolina, who, I mean, they might be one of the smaller teams that Duke plays for the rest of the year, based off of the lineup they ran out, especially in the first half. But certainly not a great defensive team, this Syracuse team. Can Con Knipple to continue, that was almost a tongue twister there, continue to have success on the offensive end of the court? And I think in this one, can he pick off where he left off against North Carolina and keep, along with Cooper, like with his passing, getting guys open, getting them easy shots? I think that's going to be something I'm looking forward to in this game against Syracuse.
So, let's stay with Con for a minute. The fact that they both had 20 points at just over 20 points and 5 or more assists in the Shire interview. One of the reporters pointed out that the last time that happened was when John Shire was playing. The idea that you have two guys that can generate those kind of numbers in a game is really impressive. So you do want the arc of Con Knipple's play to continue, so that there really are these two massive weapons who are capable of both putting up 20 points a night. And then, it's just a question of whether Proctor can shoot and is on, and he will get close to 20 as well. So the three things that I'm really looking for is Malik Brown's return to Syracuse, and we talked about that before. Whether or not you're right and they can get him into double figures, I don't know if that's to me the most important part of him returning to Syracuse, as it is just impacting the game. So I'm pretty certain that as long as there were no health issues with his knee, that he is going to play more minutes as
He
they start to.
he looked better than he did because you remember he missed that one game. Like I don't remember what the injury was. He came back and he didn't. There was like a series of games, and I forgot who's one of our uh, watchers said this that like they thought he wasn't fully right when he came back from that, and there was a series of games where we were saying like solid performance from Malik Brown, but not disruptive like we had seen him before. And what he looked like he did in the before he missed that one game against North Carolina, and like he looked much healthier is what I'm getting at. So
Well, and so assuming that is the state of affairs in Duke injury land, which we never know exactly what is going
yeah,
on there, then I expect him to get more minutes. Absolutely, let him play. 20 minutes or so in at Syracuse. The second thing is, and I think you framed it right, and I jumped on it before, is that getting over the incredible victory over UNC and then looking ahead to Clemson, it has the makings of a trap game, except that I think this team won't let that happen against Syracuse, even though it's Syracuse on the road. And the third thing is, you know, assuming, look, Caleb Foster's going to get his minutes coming in there, and I just hope he can start to find his rhythm, because we need to find him, and we're in February, and it is time for Caleb to be part of this rotation, and he could be an important part of the rotation. And I also hope that it probably won't happen in this game very much, because they're going to give, as long as he's healthy, they're going to give Malik Brown minutes. But Patrick Gamba, in his absence, was starting to give us 5 solid minutes on the court. And I'd love for that to continue so that it really rounds off the depth of the team. So that's what I'm looking for. And my last point would say, I call myself a Duke fan, and I love the Duke players, and I love the school, and I love the teams for decades. But I only live, as you know, 3 hours by car from Syracuse, and I could get in the car and go to the game. But I will not. I've done it. I think the Carrier Dome is the worst place to play basketball. It is cavernous. It is they take the football field and they sort of cut it in half, and then it's all bleacher seats except for some. It is just the worst place I've ever known to play a basketball game. Now, the Orangeman fans will tell you different, but having been there for 2 games, I just said I'm just never going back there.
I've never been. I know. I remember when you went. I'm very curious in a week or two. I'm going to be going to the Duke game at Virginia, and I'm curious how that venue is going to be. I imagine it was probably a better place to see a game a couple years ago than it is right now, but I'm sure the fans will be very excited. Nonetheless, despite how their season has gone, to see Cooper Flag and company. Um, Speaking of Cooper Flag, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about him. He's awesome. He's fantastic. He's phenomenal. There you go. I don't. What more needs to
What
be
else?
said?
So if it's not necessarily a pattern, but if they do get off to a strong start, and Con Knippel continues his shooting, and Proctor is having a good game, look for it to be then one of those Coop games where he doesn't get to 20 points. Hard to imagine. But he doesn't get to 20 points, and all 5 stats that everyone's tracking That's rebounds, assists, blocks, steals, and his points. But look for the other four to say, how do I help my team to win in a different way and be just as dominant? And plus his defense. So this could be, if you're not a trap game, but it could be a Coop game in which he says, I don't have to do all the scoring, unless of course you're absolutely right. And after the first half, it's like a 2 point game, and Coop says, no, not on my watch. And he goes for 20 points again in the second half.
We've seen that movie before. Um, I guess let's see. You talked about Foster, Evans. I think depending on how this game goes, he could get an opportunity for 10 to 15 minutes, and he'll. I mean, we know one thing about Isaiah Evans. He's confidence is not an issue for Isaiah Evans. It's more shot selection than anything.
It's one. I'm not gonna. I forgot about Evans, but it's one of the things about playing in the Carrier Dome, which is it's basically a football stadium, and that it can negatively impact 3 point shooting, because if you're not used to the size of that arena and you're looking up and everything looks a little weird to you in dimension, because especially when you're in Cameron where it only seats 9,000, 9,900. I should know by now. 9914, I think, is what it is. But
Sounds good.
It can be a little weird for outside shooting inside of that for the first time you're there. That's all.
I guess that goes to Mason Gillis as well.
Mason's been, Mason's in his fifth
I
year.
guess, well, technically he redshirted a year, so it's his 6th year in college. And the one thing I was going to say, but I didn't, but now I will because it makes sense, is that Syracuse, playing at Syracuse is kind of like how the Final Four venues are typically at football stadiums. It's the same idea. And Mason Gillis has experience playing in the Final Four, so it's not going to be totally foreign to Mason Gillis. I imagine at one of his games also during his time at Purdue, he played in a big venue as well, maybe one of their non-conference games. He's certainly experienced.
I think my only point is the first time that you play in a building of that size, sort of it can affect your shooting, and so that's why the first year players I'm more concerned with, not Cooper Flag. It doesn't matter where he's playing, but Khan may actually have an issue there a little bit from the outside, and it may throw off his rhythm. It's just a strange place to play the first time.
I don't with the way Isaiah Evans is, I'm not worried about that being his issue. I think it's more likely that if he misses his first couple of shots, it's because they're probably not great shots, more than the venue. But you never know, and it is a good thing to bring up. That's everybody. I think we got to everybody. All right, we'll be back post game after Syracuse, so it should be around 9:00 Eastern time Wednesday. Do all of that YouTube stuff that helps us grow. Click all the buttons down there. Like, subscribe, share, comment, and we'll see you guys after the game Wednesday. Peace.